Hello and welcome to this new category of tutorials. I called them 3D Max Modeling Tips for H Creators. And that is because we're not going to talk about 3D modeling in general, but I want to show you some features in 3D Studio Max that can help you with tasks that come up very often in the H creation process. One of these tasks is to distribute objects along a path. For example, if you want to create a banister, a fence, a railing, whatever you like to call it. If you want to follow this tutorial along, you can pause the video right now, and in the comment section you find a download link where you can download the Max file with all the same settings as the one that I'm using here. I created this post, which, yes, reminds you of the ferry terminal in Egura because I used some textures of it. I just love the waterfront lamp here. And I also created a simple shape. This is not real 3D geometry right now. This is just a shape. And this is basically the floor plane. And we want to distribute the pole along the front edge here. First, let's make this a real 3D plane. Right now, as you can see here, parts of this spline are not yet connected. To do that, select the spline, go to the Modify panel, select the vertex sub-object, and then select these 2 points here that right now are disconnected. And in the Weld tab over here, where you can weld these 2 points together, increase the threshold a little bit to about 30, and click Weld, and as you can see, the 2 vertices weld together and are now 1 point. We need to do the same thing at the other end of the arc here. Just select these 2 vertices and click on Weld, and if you select them again, you can see right now it is only 1 vertex. Now that we have a closed spline, we can convert this spline into a polygon object. To do that, right-click on the spline and go to Convert to Editable Poly. So now this is a real 3-dimensional object with faces that you can modify. And as I already told you, we want to distribute the post object here along the front edge. And this is a very nice workflow tip because you can use it very often. To create a path from an edge of a 3D object, select the object, go to Edge Sub-Object, and then select all the edges that you want to create the path from. Now, as you can see, they change from white to red. If you don't see that, right-click on the perspective viewport here and make sure that Edged Faces is selected. Now let's just select the front edge here. And if you have selected all the edges that you want, go to Create Shape from Selection. If you click on this, it asks you for the name of the new shape, and let's call that Path Banister, and make sure that you have linear checked, otherwise you may get issues with the transition here from the curvature to the linear side. So linear and OK. If we now go back to the main level of 3D Max and hit the H key on the keyboard, you can bring up the Select Objects dialog, and in here you have the new object Path Banister. Let's select that, and let's move it backwards just a little bit. This is too much, just a little bit, so that we have a little bit of an offset here, like that. Okay. And let's also change the color of the path so that we can see it easily. An important point is, if you want to distribute this post along the path, at which point is it going to be attached to the path? Well, the point where it's going to be attached is the pivot point of this object. Right now, as you can see, the pivot point is exactly in the middle of the object. We don't want that. Let's switch to the Hierarchy tab over here and click on Effect Pivot Only. Let's now switch to the left viewport and zoom in a little bit and select Move. If you now move the pivot, you can change its position without changing the position of the object. And we want to position the pivot point somewhere here at the front edge of the post and near the bottom. Let's deselect Effect Pivot Only, go back and to perspective mode. And with the post object selected, click on Tools, Spacing Tool. this has all the settings that we need to distribute the object along the path. So first we need to pick the path, and let's select our path. And already you can see that 3 posts have been distributed along the path. Let's just increase that value to 12. I think 12 is a nice value here. And the magic happens if you click follow down here, because this makes the objects orient along the path. Of course there are many other settings, but we'll leave it at this for the moment and click apply and close. And now you have all the post objects nicely distributed along the edge. The next thing you want to do is create the screen between the different posts. One way to do that, the simple way, would be to select the path again and then go to the modify panel and attach an extrude modifier. Then you could just, well, push this up and you have your screen. I want to do it a little bit more sophisticated in this tutorial, so let's delete this modifier. I have used the distance between these 2 post objects to create a little element to put between them. And it is already created, but it is hidden right now, so right click somewhere in the viewport and click unhide all, and here the element pops up. It is very simple, it's just 2 box objects and in the middle a plain object with a blue color attached to it. And as I said, I created this element between these 2 posts so that I have the correct spacing. One last thing we need to do is switch to the front viewport. By the way, down here, this little icon here, zoom extends. This brings you to the currently selected object, just a little tip. And the last thing we need to do is again change the pivot of this object, because right now it's in the middle, so that means that the object would sink into the ground when we distribute it along the path. To change that, again go to hierarchy, affect pivot only, and move the pivot point down to the ground plane, and deselect and come back to the perspective viewpoint. Let's move it a little bit outside. Go to a view where you have a nice overview over the scene. Okay. And again, with the element selected, go to Tools, Spacing Tool, pick the path. And right now you can see we have the same settings as for the post objects, but we don't want that. If you're good at mathematics, you know that we need 1 element less between the posts, so change the count from 12 to 11. And the last thing we need to do, of course, all these settings vary from time to time depending on the scene and the path that you have, but for this example it's very simple. We just need to add a start and an end offset, which basically pushes the objects towards the middle, because right now they are too far at the outside. And we have very nice values here. If you click 50 and 50, they are being pushed in exactly into the right position. Just click apply and close, and if you now come in here, you can see that we have the fence elements, the banister elements perfectly aligned, and we have a beautiful banister along the edge. And if I see this, I want to start modeling an edge around this right now. But this concludes the tutorial. Of course, there are many applications for this. The basic key to this technique is extracting the path that you want the objects to distribute along from a 3-dimensional object. And to do that, as I've already shown, you go into the edge subselection mode and you select the edges that you want, and then you hit create shape from selection, and then you have your path along which you can distribute the objects.